Hello and welcome to the Modern Day James Show. I am, as always, Modern Day James. And this week we will be expanding our visual library. In this series, we will break down the world around us into easy-to-digest forms and try to retain that as knowledge.
We will be putting aside our traditional pens in exchange for the computer. This way, we can reuse our primitive blockouts in between each subject. Today, we will be studying the human head. So let us begin.
Our goal here today is to build a repository of angles in which to view our subject. In order to fully understand it and retain it in your visual library, you need to be able to represent that subject in any angle and camera position. Instead of rushing into a direct drawing of a subject or camera angle that I'm not particularly comfortable with, I begin with a simplified primitive blockout and rotate it sequentially. In this first group of blockouts, I'm starting with the camera position beneath our subject, and then rotating the subject until it reaches 180 degrees. I started with the camera position this way because it's the most challenging for me, and I think it's important to tackle our weaknesses directly. An important thing to take note of is that as we rotate our blockout counterclockwise, the left vanishing point moves further away from the center, and our right vanishing point moves closer towards it. And now we've rotated to a point where we're looking at the profile view in a one-point perspective. It's not entirely necessary to show how this tilted cylinder contacts the form of the head, but I included it to show how these forms would insert into one another. Now once again, the left vanishing point will move further away from the center and the right vanishing point will move towards it. If you're having trouble creating these modified forms in perspective, take a step back and try to do it with a simple cube first. I cover a cube turning exercise in the first episode of the Becoming a Geese series that will strengthen your ability to do this. And if you're completely new to perspective, take a look at my Perspective Basics series. In it we cover 1-point, 2-point, and 3-point perspective, mirroring planes, and creating curves and ellipses. But once you're comfortable with simpler forms, try your hand with a more complicated shape. Even though we're drawing digitally and we can sometimes take advantage of Ctrl-Z, I think it's important to try to exercise intent with every single line that we create, and avoid creating fuzzy, indecisive lines. I'm going to do a future tutorial on different types of lines and how to improve your line work, but an important component of it is being confident in your decision making and having a steady hand. Now let's shift the position of the camera to above the subject. I'm making a lot of approximations about the convergences of these lines as I do this. While there are more precise ways to create these twisting forms, I'm just trying to find a subject that looks correct, rather than a form that is perfect. Which I think is a really important point, because while we're trying to be very scientific about our decision making, we are still making art. And a lot of times it's the imperfections that really give a drawing life and character.
Remember that as the left vanishing point moves further outward, the right vanishing point moves closer to us.
Thanks F3T0J. Now I'll finish up the remainder of the blockouts. Now that we have our primitive blockouts in place, we can start drawing our characters. It'll be a lot easier to pre-visualize how the face will look now that we have this geometry underlying it. I have a reference photo off to the side from which I'm getting the details of the character, but I'm applying them in accordance to perspective. For example, once I place the eye closest to us, I simply travel back towards the right vanishing point to find the placement of the second eye. It's important to not get too tied down by the geometry. Feel free to break out of or cut into the silhouette of the form. Again, while I'm taking advantage of Ctrl-Z, I'm still trying to draw in a direct manner, meaning that all lines are intended to be final lines. I think for me a really important part of line drawing is creating a distinction between different materials. That's why I spend a lot of time texturing the head hair and the facial hair. Since the camera is positioned underneath him, we continually see the underside of the jaw. One thing I really struggled with as I was doing this is trying to maintain the likeness of the character between the poses. Because the character has a pretty distinctive hairstyle, it's kind of easy to fake this a bit. As the character continues to turn counterclockwise, we see less of the front of the face and more of the back of the head. Notice that the eye just becomes a small sliver as we approach these back views. Also notice that the ear has a tilt to it, with the top furthest from the head. And keep in mind that there's a cylindrical volume that connects the ear to the head that's a lot more visible when we're looking from the back view. Now I'll draw the character again, but with the camera positioned above his head. Although I don't put in a lot of rendering information, I do include a heavy shadow underneath the nose to demonstrate that it's a large protruding form and that the light is coming from above. I've done this with all the sketches so far. We most commonly encounter top lighting in real life, so all the planes that are facing downward or are occluded by a form will be in a heavy shadow. That's why the upper lip, beneath the lower lip, and behind the ears are all in shadow. Because the hair is curving around the head, some of the planes are in shadow and some of the planes are in highlight. Areas that are perpendicular to the direction of the light source will be the brightest. Hence why I draw the hair on the top of the head lighter than I do behind the ears. Also take note of the fact that hair tends to form small groupings, each with their own gradient from dark to light. And since the nose is overlapping the cheek, I increased the line weight on it to show that it's in front. And this face didn't really come out resembling the others. Now that the head is tilted away from us once again, we start to see the back of the ear and the back of the head. At this vantage point, the eye is really just a small sliver and is not very prominent. Again, twisting further back, we can see how much volume is actually behind the ear. And the front facial features are just small lines protruding past the cheekbone. In this view, we really don't see any identifying features whatsoever. Just the brow and cheekbones, and a little bit of the mouth. Now once we've finished that turnaround, we can start with another character, using the same primitive geometry from before. I wanted to get a range of characters, so now I'm drawing a middle-aged woman. I'm using a reference photo of a front view, which gives me an idea of what the features will look like, while still challenging me to turn it in perspective in my mind. One of the benefits of doing this exercise is that it forces you to make observations that you may have previously overlooked. For example, with this character, I noticed how the shape of the eye is affected by the drooping of skin from the overlying brow. Also with this character, her brow bone pinches in as it approaches the bridge of the nose. It's characteristics like these that you want to take note of. That way you can recreate it in the future, or even exaggerate it if you want to make your own characters. Another feature that I had trouble with is the connection between the neck and the jaw, but drawing it over and over again in different angles strengthens your understanding of the proportions. And once again, we'll place the camera above our subject. Again, notice how much of the eye is occluded by the drooping of the skin on the brow. Also, take note of the shape of the eye. It's very different than the typical pictographic eye we instinctually draw as children. There's a lot of depth between the brow and the socket, and we need to make sure that we capture it in our drawings. And now we'll do another character, a younger female this time. In a younger person, there's much less drooping of skin and less folds underneath the eyes. The female neck is typically much thinner than that of the male counterpart, and it'll often be a main component of making her appear feminine. Additionally, the upper lid is not occluded by the skin on the brow bone. And now I just continue doing the same thing. Follow the perspective of the blockout to find the placement of each feature. So go ahead and try this out for yourself. You can do this with pretty much any subject matter you want to understand, and it can be done with varying camera lenses. And that's it for this week, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. I'll be putting out new videos every Thursday, as well as live streaming every Friday through Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to catch up with all the previous live streams, get group lessons, or just want to support the channel, you can sign up at patreon.com. Stick around till next week for another new episode. Thank you, guys.